We have two items on our agenda. I'm taking item C off the agenda this evening. There are a couple of other appointments that have come up with resignations, and I want to make sure we get those filled. Since we have 3 weeks between now and the next regular session, we'll have another work session prior to our next actual regular session, so I'll submit them at that time. But under item A, we have an overview of the city solid waste recycling lawn waste bulk item program, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
A very long title for a very complex topic.
You do a lot of work, don't you, George?
I'm going to immediately turn it over to Mr. Murdoch to introduce this topic.
Thank you, sir. Tonight we are going to be giving you a basic overview of the city services along with some of the statistics related to the services provided by Constable Sanitation. The presentation that we are doing tonight is being passed out to you so that you can follow along if you would like. Primarily, one of the things that we wanted to address with the council tonight is an ongoing effort by staff and the Constable Sanitation employees and ownership in terms of providing education to the community on ways that not only we can help them provide a better service, but then the comments that come back to them so that they can also do things differently to provide even better service to our residents. And so that effort has to be in combination with one another. And so we are going to go over some of those statistics related to the service that they provide, but also then kind of those next steps that we hope to do along with Constable to continue to refine and essentially make that service as the best it possibly can be for the residents. So we do have George and Shannon here with us, and we're going to kind of tag team this presentation as we go along tonight. But feel free anytime during this to stop, ask any questions that you have related to those particular services that we are going to cover this evening. So with that, just real basic statistics. We have a large population, obviously, of people who use the service. So we're over 8,000 people that are trash customers, and we have just over 6,000 recycling customers here in Raymore. I did go ahead and put the rates that we currently have with Constable for two reasons. Number one is to make sure that everyone understands that we have one of the lowest rates in the metro, which is excellent, but also to just kind of remind the council that each year we take a look at those rates. And that'll be coming up here in June again to look at the rates in comparison to the increases that have happened within the industry over the course of the last year. Typically, Constable will submit a letter to us indicating what the index is for the year, and then a proposal for the rates for the upcoming year. So you'll see that here in the next couple of weeks, which is why this is also timely that we're going through this particular presentation. In addition to the services that Constable provides and that most trash haulers provide, you would also then be able to notice that they do provide a few additional things to us that many haulers do not provide, and it's going to kind of segue into something that I would like for them to address for us, because it is something that we get not all the time, but in terms of recycling. So you get a lot of bags of trash, so they take a lot more than a lot of haulers do. They do offer the weekly recycling program that many of our residents do take advantage of, instead of requiring residents to go and actually drop those off or only do those twice a month. They do take yard waste yearly. I'm still in an area where it's still seasonal, so that is something that is offered to our residents. But I do really want to highlight the last one, which is the bulk item pickup. Constable continues to do the monthly bulk item pickup, which is becoming exceedingly rare. And there are challenges to bulk item pickup that I'm sure George and Shannon can attest to, not only from what is actually set out there, but then what it does in terms of impacting the schedule overall for all of their trucks as they try to complete just their normal duties. So bulk item becomes kind of a big issue. So I did want to turn it over to George and Shannon here for two items. They can address the bulk item issue, but also we do get a question, what happens to the recycling? That is a relatively common question that we get, and I thought that they could address that as well. So I'll turn it over to them to complete this particular part of the presentation.
Thank you for having me here tonight. I definitely enjoy coming in and talking about the trash program. It's something I'm still very passionate about here in Raymore. And, you know, with additional services to, depending on the trash side, the demographics are in Raymore. People come to Raymore typically to raise a family. And depending on what statistic you're looking at, it's 4 to 7 pounds of trash per individual per household. So that's really where the 10 bags and that those can limits really matter in Raymore, because we feel that people move here, for the parks, the schools, and just general overall the town. So that's really important that we keep those limits where they can be achieved with a larger family. And on the recycling side, as Ryan mentioned, it's not uncommon, where people always say, hey, where's this recycling going? It just goes to the landfill anyway. And as far as myself, I work inside a very, green, sustainability friendly industry. We don't have our trucks, solar powered charged every night. We're not on that spectrum, but we do bring our recycling to the facility and have done so for years. And it really, I'm more into logistics. I care about getting that from A to B. We know that the work that the residents put into separating that, and just even to a personal level, I want to make sure what we offered is exactly that, and that it goes to the recycling center.
George, can I ask you a question? So, talking about the recycling center, and I know you guys are diligent about getting it there. What is the percentage of contamination? Are you going to get into that a little bit on our recycled materials that our residents submit? Does the recycling center report back to you the percentage of trash that is contaminated that cannot be recycled?
The recycling center only reports back as a whole, not as a town.
Okay.
There could be a further discussion with that particular provider to say, hey, I want the loads that come in from Raymore, these truck numbers dumped in a different spot. Then they can break it down to the fibers, what plastics, contamination levels, if there's trash, and do that type of model.
I don't want it to add to our expense. I was just
No.
because
I think it's
that
great.
sounds like a little extra work for them, and they're probably going to charge for that. But on an overall, for this area, do you know, have they ever told you, is it a 10%, 15% contamination is the average, or 20%?
There's what you call acceptable contamination inside of your single stream recycling, and for the most part, Raymore meets that.
Okay.
If there's one item that stands out, that mixes in the stream, it's always styrofoam. Styrofoam is what you find in the cardboard boxes or in the recycling cans more than anything else.
Yeah, I think sometimes people don't understand that has to be segregated and actually put in the trash, the styrofoam that goes to the landfill, because it's not recyclable.
Yeah, and you're working to, with recycling, I always say, unfortunately, from the governmental practices, sometimes they come to us and say, hey, this has to be 70% recycled.
Right.
And it's our job to figure out how to make
get
that
there.
happen, instead of going in on the front end and having the manufacturer make something that can be 70% recycled.
Sure.
And they've been better about that over the years, to try to go full circle and, say, hey, if we manufacture and use this packaging, what can you do with it?
Sure. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop your momentum there. You were going.
Oh,
Go
no,
ahead.
you're fine.
And correct me if I'm wrong, George, but my understanding, it's been a moment since I've been to the recycling facility in Harrisonville where your recycling goes, but it's all sorted there.
Right.
So the bad recycling gets moved to the trash, and we meet with Ben, the general manager over there, regularly, every other month or so, and he has not threatened to kick us out. So that's helpful. He does wish, and with all haulers when he meets us, that we encourage cleaner recycling for sure. Limiting glass and styrofoam is the number one thing he said is the biggest challenge that they're having right now.
Okay.
So.
Did you want to? I would like for you also, George, real quick, to address the bulk, because
Yeah.
you and I had the conversation right recently about just the sheer amount that is getting set out now for bulk. So, can you talk through with the council just a little bit about the challenges that bulk provides for you to be able to haul off?
Yeah, bulk is just an additional stream, and it's going to challenge your capacities. So if you have, 3 trucks but need 3.5 trucks for bulk, you're in a tighter spot. It's going to challenge those routes, and it's something that has heavy fluctuations. You wouldn't see a large amount of bulk in February. The people are setting it back and waiting until the snow is cleared to get it out there. It has even challenges sometimes to get it curbside. Bulk is something that a lot of haulers, because of that reason, went away from. I know a large amount of our workplace injuries has to do with bulk or something that's heavy enough to try to put it in the truck, and it falls apart by the time you get it there. And bulk is still something that I believe in personally, because I wouldn't want to ask my grandmother to take her car down to get rid of this chair to dispose of it. It's something that should be set outside the can that doesn't fit your regular program, but it shouldn't be an additional trip to a landfill or a transfer station, because navigating that traffic, if you're not familiar with that facility, is anxiety, and it's dangerous, too. So as long as I'm still hauling, it's something that I want to keep doing, because I do think there's less and less commuter traffic at these locations. So it's more big truck friendly, and to keep the cars and the smaller pickups out, it's a service that we need to continue to offer. And it comes at a convenience that kind of goes unnoticed. When you're not going to one of those facilities, you don't know how luxurious it is setting it there at the curb, because you didn't have that experience of going, paying that amount, waiting in the line, dealing with the truck traffic, everyone moving. And, I'm glad they haven't had those experiences, but it definitely kind of makes it go unnoticed.
Do you have to use a separate vehicle for that?
Yes, we use a separate rear load truck. A lot of the times it's the yard waste crews that get involved. I've jumped in and done it myself personally. And we know what times of the month, or what months of the year it's really going to pick up. May is a very heavy bulk. I don't know when Raymore did its garage sale week, but typically
After that, it's
it's whatever didn't sell in a garage sale is, now belongs to us.
Yeah.
But
George
With-
and I were actually talking about opening our own gym with all the discarded gym equipment that we see out there. Lost hope in front of everybody's.
yeah,
Do your regular trash drivers, do they report specific addresses to you so you don't have to travel every street?
you have
Or do
to
you have to
travel
hit
every
every street?
You have to hit every
You do?
street, and it has a different participation level in different areas. But Raymore uses the program, which is great. You don't want to offer something and have it go unused. But on the other side of that, you do have to go down every street. It might be 1 in 10, 2, 10, 20% participation rate over a chunk of 2,000 homes. Adds up to a lot of big items. It takes sometimes 2 or 3 trucks, trips to even dispose of it.
Sure.
And we're talking, items that are dry, which typically provide less compaction. Your mattress and box springs are going to take up a different amount of that truck than your regular trash bags would.
Mr. Barber?
Yeah, I just had a comment and question. I noticed on those bulk pickup days, there's a lot of scrappers that run around and get the metal and all that. Is that something you guys have encouraged, or is they just kind of organically done that? No, and pick that stuff up. Well, I see the trucks, and most of the trucks look like they should be dropped off at the scrapyard, but
Yeah.
but at least they're picking it up and it's not going in the landfill.
Yeah, you want it, reuse, recycle. You don't want to discourage any of that. But there was one in a particular area here recently that I had to have a conversation with. Is if you pull up to it, you take the whole thing. And they took the glass top off and just threw it in this person's yard. And it was a problem.
Made a bigger mess, huh?
Yeah, it needed to be addressed. And, sometimes there's no uniformity with those, style of pickups. So, if we know who they, we see the truck and we see it full of stuff, and we're not constable, we're not the real police. It's just the constable name, but, so there's so much we can do, but, it's just telling them like, yeah, you put your hands on it, please take it, because we don't want customer issues on the other side of that. And with bulk too, it increases for that entire week. Our misses the next day will have an increase to them. These items, it's sometimes difficult enough to find a good place for your trash and your recycling can and your yard waste to all be visible. You add in a fourth item like that might be a TV or something that lays flat in the grass, a canvas, art. Those are missed during bulks all the time because your truck view from that level is, you just can't catch them. So we definitely have an increase of turnarounds during that time, which we just go back and get those items. But it's kind of an area that comes with that territory.
And that's a kind of a nice one because you'll see a video from a truck here in just a little while. So you'll get to see kind of what it looks like from up above here in just a little bit towards the end of the presentation. Shannon, did you want to add one thing before I go on here?
Yep, just real quick, from a customer service standpoint in our office, I just wanted to pass along an example that came in today. Actually, we had a resident that called in and they said, hey, the same truck just came by, got my trash, and then came back by about 10 minutes later and got my recycling. And I'm like, well, that's odd. Okay, let me look into this and see what's going on. So obviously we encourage those calls because we want to investigate those when those types of issues come in. And we pulled our video and we saw what had happened. And the side load truck went by, picked up their trash, did circle back around. However, they're a right side collection, so they'll do that on every street. So they circled back around and were collecting the other side of the street. During that same time span, the rear load trash truck that holds the recycling went by. So the resident just got confused. And so once we explained it to them, they were like, oh, got it, understood. So I just thought that was an interesting example. I know that sometimes those complaints will come in and they'll say, oh, the same truck pick up the recycling. But I promise you that our trash truck drivers do not want to do extra work. They only want to get the one can they're required to get and then move along.
Mr. Mills?
Again, on the yard waste, I just compliment I'm on Lucy Webb, so I mean, no matter what day of the week, the trash trucks tend to have to drive Lucy Webb to get in and out. But your yard waste guys, I mean, I put yard waste out, my pickup's Friday, but I may have 5 bags of yard waste out there on Tuesday, and they'll stop and pick them up on Tuesday. I mean, as they're going by and they see yard waste out, I've had them stop and pick it up. And so, I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, it's kind of like, makes it look nicer. You don't have all those bags out there and things like that. Maybe they're not supposed to do that, but for me, I appreciate that. It tells me that they're actually kind of invested in their job, and it's like, hey, we're going by here anyway. There's yard waste out there. Let's stop and grab it real quick.
He probably shouldn't be, confusing people on their pickup day, but he's been here enough, and you're educated about the trash program and the zone and the maps. I just don't want to have someone say, well, they normally get on Tuesday, it's Wednesday. Well, the trash day's this, but you've had a lot of the same drivers for the most part in this area. I think that particular individual maybe 3 years out here, there hasn't been. They typically do become invested in the area. They have people that they stop and talk to on the routes, and Raymore gets a lot of compliments. And you know, it's an area where, for the most part, my drivers want to be. They might say, "Hey, if this route's open, I'd love to hop on it." And you know, that's for the most part credit to the residents, where you know our drivers feel well taken care of and they like it.
We're gonna speed through these next couple of things here for you. The first one is just to make sure that the council understands we do track misses, not only between constable, but then the calls that come into City Hall to report misses, whether that be trash, recycle, yard waste, all of those misses we end up tracking. If we went back a full year even, which we have the stats all the way back, but I just put the last 3 months for you to make sure that everybody understands we hold pretty steady at around 1%. I mean, that's a nice general figure to know. It fluctuates obviously from month to month, but just know we hover right around 1% in terms of misses. And that kind of goes along then with the next slide, just to understand how big some of these actual days are that we're picking up. And George and Shannon are going to articulate just a little bit about some of the equipment that's out on the road. We won't go through that entire slide that you'll have here in just a second, but primarily speaking, Wednesdays and Thursdays, we are the biggest pickup days for the city of Raymore. And then we do end up with Silver Lake on Fridays as a small component of this, but and your house. But overall, Wednesdays and Thursdays, we do tend to have the largest number of pickups. And what you'll see then here that George and Shannon can give a brief overview of is the sheer amount of equipment that's going on our roads. And that's going to lead to something else here in just a second that we'll talk about. So if you want to just give us a quick overview of the amount of equipment that's out there, George, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's that equipment number has changed over the years. As I believe when we first started Raymore's contract, it was around 7,600 homes, and now it's almost 8,500 in that residential sector. And I know you've even added some apartment complexes, and it's a growing community. And with serving that, it's definitely can't be done by one truck, one crew. So we put a lot of side load equipment out there for the automation aspects of it. There's still some rear load stuff that has to work in, but as far as the slide, you know, it goes through the number of employees, what the purchase price of that equipment was, you know, as well, just to show that it's not a wake up and we'll guess, you know, where we're going to be today. You know, this is a plan that was hopefully well thought out and created a result that the customers like and the residents. So as he mentioned, you know, Wednesday and Thursday are the biggest day, and I believe just that area behind Sonic really attributed to adding the Thursday route. And it's created some, you know, reshuffle content where, you know, you have a truck that has the ability to do only X amount of homes, you know, 800 homes a day in an 8-hour shift. Now, whenever you get 900 homes, because an area grew, it actually becomes tricky. And how do you pinch off one truck from a different area? How do you add this in for the recycling side? How do you add this in for the yard waste side? And, you know, Raymore is, I'm not complaining about its growth by any means. It's just a continued moving target and trying to achieve our goal of making sure that everyone's picked up takes a lot of effort, and I try to make sure that my supervisors keep communicating with those crews on what the new area is. I know Google doesn't say it's there. I promise you that street exists. It's just not updated on Google yet. You know, we've even hand mapped stuff, but we're trying to make sure that we communicate with them and that they know, you know, that someone moved in here. Before you know it, this will be 30 houses. So, you know, you might be driving in for one or two now, but, you know, it's a developing community.
The next slide that we're going to address here is probably one that you will want to know from a standpoint of city staff. So there's 3 of us in the city that primarily get the calls related to service with constable. It's myself, it's Miss Boyd at the front window there, or Miss Harmer. Those are typically where the calls come from in terms of any issues that residents are having with any part of the service. So we're talking trash, recycling, yard waste, and or bulk here. What we did is the 3 of us talked and we kind of pooled together the most common things that we have reported to us in relation to service that our residents will contact us about. So you can see those listed right there. So either trash that's still in the cans, sometimes they're down at the bottom. We would just say it got stuck essentially, right? Or if it ends up getting spilled a little bit on driveways and their side yard, sometimes that can be wind related though too. There's lots of factors associated with these things. We certainly have those misses that are reported, though typically when we get a missed call, we have gotten pretty good about asking those questions about the miss, right? When did you actually put the cans out? A lot of times we'll have people who said that they didn't get them out till mid-morning or lunch, and we can address that with them in terms of making sure that they're out on time. We will have some people that will report the miss even before the end of the day, and so the truck still ends up getting there by the end of the day, and so then sometimes we'll check back with them, or they'll call back and say it did get picked up. I did want to make sure and articulate, though, if it is a miss, we do contact constable. They usually are back out, sometimes the same day if they can get there. Typically, though, it's always within 24 hours that they have it picked back up, and they've done what we would consider to be a really, really good job with that. You'll notice, and this is one that we do get, is the spills, whether it be oil or hydraulic, and we're going to address part of that in terms of the automation of the trucks here in just a second. But it is really important when we field those calls as staff that we make sure and tell residents the sooner that you can get that reported to us, the better chance we have of getting it cleaned up, right? The longer that sits there, the harder it is for all of us. One of the reasons we get those spills, though, is we do have overloaded cans that will overload the hydraulic arm, people who are putting incredibly heavy items into those bins. And that's doing 2 things, by the way. One that they can address if they want to here when we address the hydraulic arms with George and Shannon can, that the heavy weight is a burden to those arms. But the other thing that it's doing is it's destroying the bin. Is that it typically will break the bin obviously quicker, whether that be the lid or the actual bin that then we end up needing to replace for the resident when we overload those particular things. So on the next couple of slides, we do think it's really important to understand the automation portion that the industry has moved to. So the next 2 slides are going to address both of those things, and then we'll move on to kind of those next steps here.
And what you're seeing in this picture here is just a trash truck, rear loader is what we call it in the industry. Has a driver, has a guy on the back, was used for 80 years in the trash business, still used today. It's what we do bulk and yard waste in. Very dependable. But for a very long time, the trash industry was in the top 3 on the labor statistics for most dangerous jobs. And it also has a interesting value to price. So when we use these, they had capacity limits on the amount of cans that they could pick up, making cost higher. They had other limitations on what they would hold, and that they had certain work comp, or not just work comp, just workplace injury, tied to them, with, especially with today's driving habits, with distracted driving and other things that take place on the road, that there's a lot more traffic than there used to be. So from an industry standpoint, to take the cost down, we replaced that individual with a hydraulic arm. And I don't want to sit at the end of this table and say everything's perfect in those systems and say that everything has been worked out and what we see today is going to be for the next 20 years. Automation is revolving, and what they're doing with the equipment is improving and striving, to have the less spills and to have less incidents with the arm, to make it safer, to bring in some AI technology that can detect when the can's heavy. And as all this stuff progresses, hopefully we'll make it better in the future. But this is the picture of the main arm that we use. Most of the trucks, all the trucks here that are side load in Raymore are either New Way or Labrie product arms. They come straight out. There's areas of Raymore that have mailboxes by the driveway, so for can placement, we wanted to make sure it was a straight out arm. Otherwise, it would annoy the drivers to constantly get in and out of their seat. This particular arm, for instance, has 16 hydraulic hoses, 32 hydraulic fittings, 5 cylinders, 10 other hydraulic hoses, and 20 hydraulic fittings on each side, just outside the hopper and outside the arm itself. It has a significant amount of hydraulic powered products that could go fault.
The municipal points of failure.
Yes, multiple points of failure. And if you're doing that over, for instance, our Thursday route has the 5 side loaders. You know, so now all of a sudden you're not talking about 16 hoses just on the arm, you're talking about 80 across the town at one given moment. And the process is to try to, you know, limit the exposure to those leaks because Raymore has high town curb appeal. You know, these are very nice homes that people, you know, work to live in, to purchase, and we're trying to, a trash company that's doing a good job is invisible as possible. You know, we're not trying to create, you know, any type of curb issues there. But when it does happen, we go through it with our supervisors. If a line broke, our policies on how it's reported, shut it down immediately. One of the big things is to limit the carry of that hydraulic. Like, let's get something on it right away that limits the drive-through of it, the smear, you know, of people driving over it and picking it up into their driveways, down the road further, those type of items. And we typically do that with oil dry and try to get that product down. Then we have a power wash system, which we have him come out and he'll do some light chemical. And I know last year Shannon invested in buying our power washer a vacuum wastewater type of pickup to make sure that we're not polluting the sewerways as well. And its automation is something that is going to continue to grow inside trash. I would be hard pressed to find a trash company that can't not do it in 10 years. It is the way for the productivity to keep costs low and to keep people safe. But, you know, with that, hopefully there's more advancements, and anything that would spill or hose breaking, you know, we're investigating, we're looking at. It drives me nuts whenever I hear, you know, that kind of item. I want to have practices that find this stuff beforehand and try to do our best to, you know, keep those limited as possible.
So for just a second, any questions so far? We good?
Mr. Baker.
In regards to the hydraulic thing, are your trucks, I've seen these videos like on YouTube where some trash companies will actually have video to where they can watch the container being picked up and go in the truck. Are your trucks equipped with any of that stuff? Or?
Yeah, we use a company called Third Eye is in a lot of the trucks, and they will have the camera that comes out of the arm. They'll have your hopper camera to try to catch items. It'll have your blind side camera since you're driving right side. Mm-hmm. It's not too, you know, most of the accidents that happen in those vehicles are the car go around, so someone doesn't, you know, pay attention and goes left. So it keeps that. There's some censoring that they're coming out with as well to kind of help manage things. Those are large pieces of equipment, and back to, you know, with the automation over rear loader, that was the beautiful thing about a rear loader is you have a guy back there that says, hey, this is happening, shut your system down. There's been instances where something happens underneath the truck while the guy's driving it, and if he doesn't get it, see it for the first 10 stops, I mean, it's too late. The damage has been done. And that is an issue just from an industry standpoint of the automation, being able to visualize. And there's nothing to my knowledge too that monitors pressure from one thing to an item, because, I think running circulating pressure from your pump is 35 gallons per minute and about 2,000 PSI across your system to work the hydraulic cylinders. I wish there was something available to say, hey, you got 50 pounds of pressure here, beep, beep, and you try to add those safety things, but not be obnoxious to drivers, to overdo it. So, we look at those carefully, is some of the safety items that you can have counterproductive? Is it a constant beeping that they actually neglect, or does that become distracted driving after that?
How often, like I'm sure they all do pre-trips and probably post-trips on the equipment, but do they, like, during the day, how often do they, get out and look at hydraulic lines? I recently, no problem. At one point we were having a lot of problems, especially in Ward 1, it seemed like, but not recently. But how often do they look at the lines and all that? Or does that affect all, if they lift a can up and, hydraulics are working, it probably goes right up. If hydraulics are lacking, it probably lags it a little bit.
It would only affect your system when it gets really low, as far as your hydraulic, when there's air in those lines. If you're running out of fluid and you had air in the lines, it would jump and, cause a trash spillage issue from that point. We do the pre-trip and post-trip inspections, and sorry, Shannon, I'm probably getting this abbreviation wrong. What is it? FMSC for the DOT side of regulations. I think we would see a better maybe result going to that electronically in the future, and kind of keeping the communication just at a better level of, hey, this happened. Was it reported? How was it reported? How did the mechanic handle it? And we know from a company standpoint of what trash hauling pain points are, what we would hear, be the largest complaint. And we focus on those items, of course, and try to find ways to improve them. And brings up a good point. Yeah, a midday inspection would, hopefully, you can't save them all, but maybe that one you could save, makes a difference. And from the arm perspective of the driver, when he gets out, we run ground controls. So you can operate your entire arm from actually outside the truck, and it happens quite frequently. So they would see, the hydraulic, if that was an issue, and get it reported. And also same, if they're in a cul-de-sac. And this is, of course, talks with the drivers, let's visualize, be observant to what we're doing and how we're doing it. When you're coming down a cul-de-sac and you go down the other side, was there a stream? Was there a mark? And kind of just going over that and having them communicate with us is really, in the mechanic department, is key.
Did you have something, Kevin?
Yeah, I just had a comment, because how often do your trucks get blamed for what people put in the trash? Because I have seen myself, not in the neighborhood I live today, but I have seen some stuff coming out of the trash truck that was not from the trash truck, that could have been, looked like hydraulic oil or motor oil or whatever. So I just wonder how often you get blamed for something that comes out of the truck that is not coming out of your mechanical side of your truck.
You get blamed. Everything's the trash truck's fault, but to a certain degree, we don't want to discourage any report either. So, you don't know what you don't know. So if there's something happening out on route, even if it wasn't our fault, we want it reported. We want to be able to investigate it, because without the knowledge of it, then we can't make improvements. Is it our truck and, what was us every time? No, but, we're going to look into it like it was.
Look into it and also clean it up. We've got a guy that does that for us, and we don't want to argue about it. We just get out and just take care of it. Even if we've checked the truck and we say, no, this doesn't look like this was ours. Let's just get out there and take care of it.
Yeah, and I will add on the fried turkeys, the vegetable oil, or peanut oil. Yeah, that's a big one.
And to remind folks, household hazardous waste pickup is Saturday, June 14th from 8 to noon at Eagle Glen Elementary. Anyway, next.
That was a nice drop in. There we go. The next slide is one's actually now that we've already talked about, actually, just through all of the discussion are a lot of the issues that would be reported, not only by Constable, but just kind of throughout as we've even talked to residents about some of these particular things. But this will also go hand in hand when we talk about how residents can help our provider as they help us as well. Because you're going to see throughout the summer and fall that education campaign start, and we have a sample of it for you at the very back end of this. But I do want to make sure, because I know we're running just a little long here, but I want to make sure and show you a video real quick of what we're looking at when a truck goes through a cul-de-sac. And Ms. Harmer jumped into a truck on Friday and took the video. And there's a couple of things that we want to highlight. One is the automation that you'll be able to see that the trucks have going through this particular cul-de-sac. But even more than that is going to be the amount of turns that it takes to get in and out of this particular cul-de-sac. And it really speaks to the point of, as we start to try to work with our residents about getting the cars off the road on their particular trash day, would be incredibly helpful for a lot of different reasons. So we'll take a look at this here real quick. It's only just a couple minutes long.
Look down that way, you'll see it here. Obviously, the more cars that are in that vicinity, the harder it is to go ahead and move the vehicle around. So, generally, in this case here, I know with this house, excuse me there, I've seen it in the past multiple times where both these Jeeps are out here. Okay, sometimes they'll have, I don't want to call it a conversion van. Is that better for me to put that down for you? I'm sorry. So, what do you call those? It's like the Ford Transit vans. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not conversion. I think conversion vans went out with the 80s, didn't they? So, right. I think some of the neighbors around here, they're pretty good about probably realizing that we don't have a lot of turn radius on these trucks. I would like to think that they use some common sense. I hate to put it that way, but and obviously if I got things in this area to my left that are just completely blocking me up where I just can't go any further, then yeah, it ain't much fun. So generally, there's a transit van about where the cab of this truck would be sitting as of right now, and that makes it increasingly more difficult to go ahead. It's about like trying to drive without power steering with this thing sometimes when you're trying to turn to the side, you know. More so, my worry as a driver is what happens when school's out. You know, you got kids that are running around. I mean, you know, you really got to be pretty vigilant with what you're doing. And, you know,
This is like a, what, 10-point turn at this point? I mean,
I'd
yeah.
say at least, yeah, you know, and it's, I could understand it. Maybe like around the holiday season, you got family and things like that. That would make sense to me. But I mean, we're fighting this every week as drivers, and sorry, give me a moment. And I think, to some degree, it's expected, you're going to have people that multiple vehicles, I get that, but
And if I had brought Melissa here tonight, she would have told you that we cut that video down even from the first part of even having to do all of the point turns to even start to make the turns into that particular cul-de-sac. So it would have even been a longer portion for that driver to get in and out of that particular cul-de-sac, which kind of leads us. And we can, if you have more questions, even as we go through this, is we've been talking about not only between constable but then staff as well. What can we do as a combined effort? And part of that is going to revolve around a pretty coordinated and aggressive campaign here going through the summer and fall, essentially leading into the holidays. That's the goal, right? Is for our residents and constable to work in tandem here to continue to improve this particular service. So some of those things, and many of these things we've already talked about, so we're not going to go over them again here, but I would say, unless George and Shannon disagree here, the two things that we've talked about as staff that we really want to impress upon our residents is on their trash day, if you can get your cars off of the streets. That would make for significantly more efficient pickups. It's going to help drivers. It's going to help even the interactions between people and drivers, because we do have residents who wait out to watch for the drivers to come through to see how it's going, whether it's a can that ends up getting knocked over, those kinds of things. We've had those things sent to us. But getting those cars out of the way would be incredibly helpful. From a staff perspective, we also want residents to understand a broken lid is not a broken cart. That's an expense upon the city. We can replace a lid. We don't have to replace the cart. We have those down at Public Works. We can take care of those things for a fraction of the cost of replacing the actual can. That's going to be another thing that we're going to try to impress upon residents. And then we'll continue to try to encourage the recycling aspect as we go forward, especially in terms of non-contaminated recycling, making sure that we continue that campaign of what is good and bad recycling. There's obviously some other things here as well that we'll continue to try to work towards with our residents. But we get it even on snow days, and I know that they could talk about this forever as well, that when we have massive snowstorms, we still get the calls on the exact same day of why didn't the truck make it through to actually get the trash, when we're still, even in Public Works would tell you, we haven't even got a plow down the road yet, much less be able to get a trash truck to even be able to figure out where the curb is to go and pick up trash. And so we still have those issues that we fight during those times. We do the best that we can, or let me rephrase, Constable does the best that they can. And in fact, this year, you probably remember, we had one day where we didn't pick up at all. We sent out, hey, we're delayed by at least a day, tried to encourage residents to get those things out the next day. And those kinds of communication pieces are going to continue to be important. We'll conclude tonight just by pointing you to the very last slide here, which is, this is kind of some of the basics of what we're going to encourage residents to do. And so, George and Shannon, if you just kind of want to go through, this is the example they have created, and then we're going to piggyback off of this as a city. And as you know, Ms. Harmer is excellent at what she does, and she will take that information that Constable is going to give, and we're going to put out a pretty coordinated campaign. So if you want to address kind of what you have on here to conclude, or any kind of final thoughts, I guess, on this one.
Yeah, just a comment from me is that this is completely customizable. And I know that you guys hear from your residents, and my goal is, he's field, he needs to handle what's going on with the trash trucks. I want to make sure that our communication with the residents is what's keeping them happy. So if you're hearing from residents things that you know need to be addressed, please let me know. We can customize and add to this however we need. If you're hearing from a resident, I like to think my girls are 98% perfect, but they're still going to occasionally answer something in a way that I would not have answered it, and we go over those together as a group. It doesn't happen often, but I did have one even just recently, and we had to have a discussion about how that process needs to be adjusted moving forward. There's 100 different variables, it seems like, that come through. It's hard even to train a new person in the office because it's just a different discussion almost daily about things that are coming in. So anything that we can do on our end with the office to make sure that we're communicating better with the residents, we absolutely want to do. So please just let me know.
Yeah, and back to, educating and trying to get through these routes as quick as possible, but safely. I would add to, empty cans don't litter. So on these windy days, if we cut a route short before the storm moves in and we are able to have the clear right of way so we're not doing the longer turns, then those might be the last 50 cans that we get to 30 minutes earlier, might be the 50 cans that don't blow over and scatter, litter across the neighborhood. So we always try to kind of monitor that as far as, what are we exposing those routes, how much exposure do we have. If we're taking 14 hours to do a route, then that's a can that's sitting that could possibly have issues for 14 hours. And we would ask, and we're asking the resident too much of their driveway time. So we want to definitely shrink it down and do it in a way that creates a good product.
Today is a great example, right? I mean, we had 65-mile-an-hour winds come through between 4 and 5 o'clock, so the quicker that we can get the trash trucks off the streets, the better off we're going to be in general. You'll see more about this throughout the summer, and as we start that campaign late this summer. But I think at this time, Mayor, if there's any other questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Okay. Mr. Circo.
Just for Mr. Constable, I understand your plight. When I was first married, for the first 3 years, I worked for R.D. Atterbury. Back then, trash hauled, you had the big cans. They roll them out. We had to pick them up and dump them ourselves. And then we went to the trash bags, which I was so happy for. But listen, when you're touching a trash back in those days, you had to get out, pick it up if you didn't have an extra guy sometimes. I understand their plight. It was a lot of work, 15-hour days. I did it for 3 years. And I tell you something, 3 years I'll never forget because trash hauling is tough. Back then, you guys got automation today, but whew, that was 3 crazy years.
Mr. Mills.
On your communication, one other thing I would add is if we encourage residents to bring their cans in from the curb as soon as possible. I mean, that's why you have the winds and you have stuff, or be a good neighbor. I mean, I've several times on Lucy Webb, I've had to, because cans were all the way across the other side of the road. I've went, it's only 6 houses, but I went down and pulled people's cans up out of the, closer to their house or driveway, so they're not out there in the middle of the street and causing accidents. But I notice a lot of times when I drive through neighborhoods, there's cans in the street. And I'm sure it's not the trash truck left them in the street, but the wind or things do that. And so maybe it's a lot of times just being a good neighbor. I know there's people on those streets that, but that's something we might address too, is getting those cans in.
I think we absolutely can add that. That's no problem at all. And I think that's a good suggestion. Yep.
Go ahead, Tom.
Now, when we established the cans on our own dime with our own name back then with Mr. Constable, I thought we had a start and an end date to the fees. I know we were seeing them. I didn't know we still had an end date to that or not.
We do not, sir, and as
Okay.
a matter of fact, we're going to be coming back to the council discussing the entire can fee schedule. But we've been doing we are falling behind on that particular schedule as we have to go through the replacement. did a survey of surrounding cities, and we now understand why we're falling behind, because we are basically at half of what the next lowest city is charging for the carts each month.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you for being here tonight,
Yeah,
George.
thank
Shannon,
you.
it's good seeing you again.
If anything else comes up like that suggestion, we'll be in touch and would like to continue to add to it. Those are wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
Next item is the Parade of Hearts program that we spoke about earlier and had a presentation from Lauren Palmer. And I'll let Mr. Fearborn take it here.
Thank you, sir. As we had indicated to the council, you had received a very preliminary report relative to Parade of Hearts and a software package called TC3 that they were discussing with you all. Limited information on that, and one of the things that I would ask the council to do at this point, because I have now had the chance, before making recommendation to you all tonight, I've had the chance to have a number of deep dive conversations with both the committee and very specifically Jen Nussbeck, who is actually in charge of the program. So one of the things I'm going to ask the council to do tonight that I had to get my head around is separate Parade of Hearts from the software program that is being proposed here. Somehow, because the committee is the same and because they were looking for a forward-facing vehicle to introduce this software package, those two got way too deeply combined. And then on top of that got layered the whole soccer event that's going to happen in 2026. So back up a little bit. What is being proposed to the city is that and I'm going to be recommending this to the council in next year's budget. We do not have to pay for it now. When you look at the software program, what they are proposing is a forward-facing software program that is actually extremely robust. The company that they're using actually works with FEMA on their rollout software programs from an informational standpoint. So what they were talking about originally is the fact, and we experienced this, that the suburban communities that surround Kansas City, when it comes to marketing as a region and when it comes to economic development as a region, there is no, Kansas City overshadows that. And the Parade of Hearts was a really good example of that in past years. Kansas City, and they kind of had that background. Parade of Hearts had become kind of Kansas City centric. And what they were trying to bust out on that is that type of a program, but a program that was going to be suburban centric. And then that led to a conversation relative to what else can we be doing to help the suburban communities as one, as a whole. The software program that is being proposed is a $430,000 cost to this group. In September of next year, they propose handing over, they're out of it, and they're handing over to whoever is one of the member groups. That then becomes a committee unto itself to continue to bring the software program forward. Number of communities are now signing on to this to have what was described as a seat at the table on what that software program is going to look like going forward. There will obviously be additional costs associated with it, like any other software program. The primary cost is always the initial cost for the platform. That's the $430,000. I would be asking for our membership fee, and the Lee Summit, everybody would be in the same position that we are. It's a $10,000 one-time membership fee. Then the committee itself takes that over moving forward, and they make a decision on the direction of the platform, the direction of the software. But it is, in my mind, if somebody wants to hear about Raymore, they have to go to the Raymore site and they see what we have out there. If they want to hear about our businesses, they have to proactively go to the Raymore Chamber of Commerce and look at that. This is actually out there with the ability to, if they're looking here, they see us within this platform. It is a very powerful platform. It is a very regional, suburban way to get our messaging across as another tool in our toolbox. The reason that it is timed around next summer is obviously there is a somewhat large event that is going to be going on that Kansas City is involved in with this. But that is a smaller part. Their conversation was what is going on for the intro of this in that summer, what is going on where people are going to be moving around. There's going to be an increased number of movements, not just from people coming and visiting Kansas City, but that would go on anyway in the Kansas City area that would continue year after year after year after year, where this platform would work. One of the interesting components of this when I was talking with Jen is they are not inviting Kansas City to have a seat at the table with this, because they are worried that, again, the Kansas City factor would overload this program, and they want breadcrumbs out in the communities that surround Kansas City. So Kansas City is not invited to the table on this. If later on the committee would want to have Kansas City come in, that would be up to the membership communities. The Parade of Hearts Committee, which I even hate to call them that because, again, prefer to focus on what are we getting from this software program. The Parade of Hearts Committee will be stepped back. They won't even be involved with the committee after September of next year. It will solely be run by the member communities. They won't even have an influence on the direction that this would take. But for the investment of the $10,000, I do see this as a secondary viable forward-facing software program to help with our marketing efforts, and we can put videos on this. If we want to highlight a business, each membership community can highlight as many businesses as they want on this with videos, time videos. It's not just pictures, it's not just written advertising. Again, it's a very powerful platform as it has been described to me. Taking a step back away from it, which was one of our initial conversations, if we do reintroduce the Parade of Hearts, and again, we talked about Parade of Hearts over here because I was more focused on this software program for our marketing efforts. Parade of Hearts, just to answer some of your questions, we'll have 150 sculptures. Again, they're trying to move away from the clusters that were in Kansas City. They recognize the nerd factor that the sculptures in the beginning, the people who will be visiting the sculptures, there's going to be somebody who, and they actually called it the nerd factor, who will want to go around and visit all 150 of the sculptures. In the beginning, the sculptures will have a QR code on them that you can access this particular item. That is just this particular software program, it's another way to introduce the software program. It is not, again, tied Parade of Hearts software program, two separate issues. We are, regardless of this, We are guaranteed a sculpture at this point because, again, they're moving away from the sculpture clusters in Kansas City and trying to get them out into the 7-county area that's going to be involved in this. They have gone back from 6 to 7 counties at this point. So I did want to let the council know that we do have a number of account codes, but because this will be across a number of our departments, and I've spoken with those department heads, they're very excited about the possibility of having this as a tool in the toolbox. I think it will probably come out of professional services in the administration account. That is a pretty robust account that we have. They have offered $5,000 next year and $5,000 the following year to do that. It remains to be seen. With this sort of thing, I'm always kind of a big fan of, let's just get this particular cost taken care of in the fiscal year that it needs to be taken care of. Just wanted to inform the council of that. You'll see it in the budget next year. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Circo. Will the staff for you guys for Raymore have the permission to placement of where the heart goes, or will they do that? Or will they allow you guys to choose in a city where you?
I'm sure they're going to seek our input.
They did last year. It's Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask a question about how this might work with AI, and then as I sat and listened and I thought a little more about it, it's actually going to make it a little easier for things like, because I planned an entire trip today to Chicago with ChatGPT and then jumped around. And I also found out some stuff, I did some research on Raymore as well with it, but it'll make it easier that the first information that comes from a search like that will be directed from us instead of all kinds of sources. The majority of the source material that will come in a search like that will be from this, whatever's the easiest for it to use.
And we see.
And we'll control what goes on it.
We see it enhancing our partnership with the chamber as far as the economic development component of this and business sustainability. Because again, when we've got a platform with this kind of power that one of our local businesses can put an entire video up there working with the chamber, it also takes a little bit of the load off of staff, and the chamber is looking for something like this as well.
Mr. Mills.
I'm just having trouble with the math. At 10,000 a member, there's no way that you're going to have 43 surrounding communities join to pay for this. So how is $430,000 going to be come up with to pay for this?
That Mark and that group have already committed the 430,000. That's not, the 10,000 is for ongoing costs that are going to be associated with it. They're contributing 430,000 to the program, then stepping away next September. They're buying the platform for us.
Yeah, Mr. Baker.
Is there, because obviously I think a lot of people are going to jump on a bandwagon to get to next September because of activity, but what guarantees or perceptions do we have that this can't be funded after next September? Membership slides tremendously after that. And then the second question is, after September, whoever steps away and then the member committee, I mean, is that something that, I mean, if you truly have 43 cities, who would be on that member committee? I mean, who would you perceive, or is this a 10-member committee of 10 of the 43 towns if we get to that number, or?
You won't have 43 towns in this. And the ongoing costs that would be associated with it would be your normal software maintenance costs. Nothing like this initial contribution.
And likely on the committee would be Alex or Ms. Armour from the communications department.
As well as Melissa from the chamber, sir.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, there's no more questions. As I said, C is moved to 2 weeks, next work session. So anybody have anything under other? You have anything under other?
Just one final item, sir.
Sure.
The council may have noted that on, and we are following this very closely, the council may have noted that on, at the end of last week, the United States credit rating was downgraded. They are the final credit rating agency to actually downgrade the United States. one of our worries was that there would be top-end pressure to push lower, because the United States is now just one above us. Obviously, the worry becomes, does everybody below that, since if you consider the United States a standard, does everybody else go down by nature of the next time you're rated? There would appear at this time to be, had a number of conversations over the weekend, several today. Don't see that as an indication. Actually, again, the Moody's downgrade was the last of the big three to actually go in this direction. If you look at the same standards that a municipality would have or a county would have, this probably should have happened some time ago. So it's more of a corrective action. Remains to be seen how long it will be until the United States has the ability to go back and reapply. But they have there are a number of issues that have been in place for a number of years that would put this in place while we have the ability to be a little bit more nimble. It is kind of an interesting scenario, though, that the city of Raymore is now only one step below the United States government as far as our credit rating is concerned. But I just wanted to let you all know staff is monitoring it. I don't think that there is anything to worry about at this time.
And last, I mentioned household hazardous waste being Saturday, June 14th from 8 to noon at Eagle Glen. We also have the electronic waste will be on, the drop-off is Saturday, June the 7th, the week before that, from 9 a.m. to noon right here at City Hall. So I wanted to remind everybody of that as well. If there's nothing else, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.